All right, good morning and welcome to Business Lens this Monday morning. And of course, we get to share with you stories in the world of finance, business, and the economy. And today we have a few headlines to get to. Dangote Refinery features heavily on today's show. But aside that, we have a few other headlines that might interest you as well. That's talking about the Naira rebounding to 1,485 to $1. Foreign reserves, of course, we know have now hit over $43 billion. Okay, that's good news. But we also, on the recapitalization front, we know that the CBN, of course, says that the banks should recapitalize. And we now know that 14 banks have been able to do that. But of those 14 banks, Providus Bank becomes the 9th largest bank by assets because now it has combined with Unity Bank. We did know that when you're talking about those things, we're going to have some mergers and acquisitions. This is a first, okay? So we're going to be looking at that. But yes, like I said, the Dangote Refinery news features very heavily on the show today, whether you're talking about the issue of the resumption of, Naira for crude sales, or you're talking about, the issue with Pengasing and all of the drama going on around it. So we get to unpack all of it. And as always, I do not get to do this alone, so I'm really happy about that. Daniel Efa is here. Good morning. Good to have you.
It's good to be here.
Okay. All right, then. So Daniel, of course, financial and global market analyst, and we get to look at some of the stories together. Let us start with the issue of recapitalization and Providus Bank. This is good news, actually, because what we knew when the CBN undertook this particular recapitalization exercise that we're going to see some mergers, we're going to see some acquisitions. And that basically is what we have now seen with Providus merging with Unity Bank. Yeah. And now, if you look at, the strength of that bank, they have now become the 9th largest bank in Nigeria. That is huge, basically raising it to a top-tier bank. I mean, before now, you would probably look at Providus as maybe like a second or third tier. Yeah. And now, you're seeing it as...
Unity Bank also.
Same with Unity Bank. So basically, it is both banks combining their strength. Providus now has 229 branches. And then you're also looking at 3.6 million customers. And if you look at their combined entity, total deposits is over 3 trillion naira. So, yes, this is good for the banking industry, but it's also very good for Providus and Unity, isn't it?
And so, as an entity, I think it is a good one. It's positioning them for the next phase because whether we like it or Nigeria's economy would expand going into next decade, and the banking sector is usually where the reflection of that expansion takes place. And with the new capitalization policy, it shows that they are ready, right? Even though I don't like a constitution where you say they're 9th largest by asset, I prefer 9th largest by profitability. But it can only get better, right? So it is now a serious work.
TV. And before we had to go on that break, we were talking about the recapitalization. And of course, well, if you wouldn't call it merger, you can, but you can also look at it from the point of view that it sounds more like an acquisition, of Providus Bank, Unity Bank by Providus Bank, basically. And I was talking to my financial global analyst here, Daniel Efa, about it and the possibilities that it brings. If you look at, the recapitalization exercise that the CBN undertook, I think it was in July, we heard that about 8 banks have done it, but now, during the last MPC, which was last week, the central bank talked about, the governor, so he said 14 banks have been able to meet that threshold, which is really good, which also just shows the healthy state of that sector. But then you're also looking at Providus Bank, that now has moved on to like a top-tier bank, having been the 9th largest bank in the country. You see them now having about 229 branches across the country and having about 3.6 million customers. And if you look at their combined deposits, the financial deposits from 2 companies, you're looking at over 3 trillion. So, good, right?
Yeah, it is. Like I was saying, what this does is it sets them on a very different trajectory. It creates a different brand perception about the size of the banks. So until now, we still get people do business based on the size of the financial institution they are dealing with. What it also means is now the real work starts, right? You now need to start living up to, when you're a tier 2 bank, the pressure is less, the target is less, the focus is less, the objective is even lesser. But now you're in the top 10, you are now looking at big figures, right? You're now setting higher standards. You're now looking at how do we step out of Nigeria into the African region? How do we expand business across board? How do we take advantage of the free trade agreement and push a lot of it? So it's a good one in relation to what we're trying to achieve with capitalization. It shows that we are doing well, because then if we have 14 and you have like 5-6 months before the date, it shows that it shows two things. It shows that the capitalization figures are a bit low compared to what we had the first time.
That's about 500 billion for the top.
Yes, it is, because then you look at it, look at the figures, what it was. For example, 25 billion, the 2012, 2010, thereabout. It was worth more even in USD than what it is now, right? So it is. I think we can also factor that to why it is easier, right? That we are seeing less, because then we saw more of mergers. Yes. So very few banks then survived being alone, right? Very, very few. A lot of them absorbed a lot of banks. So if we are seeing less of that now, it means that, okay, these figures are not as high, number one. Number two is that banks have grown, right, massively since that period. We've seen our banks, in fact, our banks are our biggest exporters when it comes to business-wise,
like
across the African continent. So it has shown strong corporate governance, it has shown strength, it has shown stability, it has shown deepening financial pocket, which we didn't have. You get those period. Then less of scandals, because then those are the things that really created bad image for the financial sector. Those things have been stabilized.
Yeah.
So the successive CBN administrations have all very good in terms of the fact that they've wanted to maintain the financial stability, wanted to maintain the robustness of the financial sector, and that is what we've been able to achieve. And that is why it is exciting to see that we are really going in the right direction with this capitalization, and people are really keen into it as fast as possible.
You're looking at the regulatory oversight of the CBN, right? Whether, recently CBN put out a notice about 6 months if you're going to do like a director's thing. So the CBN is very tight on regulatory framework for the banks. And the banks, they're complying, even if you look at the forbearance issue all the time. The CBN is very quick now to put out directives, and the banks, they all just sort of like fall in line, which is a good thing. Right?
And so I think it's more of the CBN's. I think it is a symbiotic relationship, right? In the last couple of years, since the 2008 financial crisis, we've seen more of banking guidelines globally, right? And it's for the kind of perception, for the kind of rating CBN has in the global community. It's important that it ensures its banks also follow suit, right? So the forbearance issue, the Basel II, Basel III framework, that has always been a very big conversation. In fact, we are not even fully implementing those frameworks yet, but in fact, we've even in recent times we've adjusted even the BOFIA, the Bank and Financial Institutions Act, to update it just to get. So we've been doing that, and of course we're not there yet. But what we are doing so far shows that we want to really rebuild that sector, because that for me is, if that is strong, you are really on your way to economic expansion. And so for whatever the CBN is doing, is both ways. You want to be in the conversation. You are going to major central bank conversations in the globe. You want them to, of course, I think we've even gotten recommendations in recent times about how we've been able to maintain stability in that sector. And when it comes, when you look at the African continent, we're probably maybe top 3, they're top 4 in terms of financial stability. So for the CBN, it is good because it allows it to be able to have proper conversations when it comes to the global stage. And for the banks also, it's also good because, yes, you have very good oversight, so you don't definitely do a lot of issues that would dent the stability of the sector.
The image of sector. You were talking about the recapitalization funds being actually small, especially if you compare it with what we had back then. But now you're looking at the fact that this might happen again. Do you think that we might get into another recapitalization issue? Maybe
So I think that I think that the reason why I would feel the reason why it is not as aggressive I think it will be because somehow, for example, the top 7 banks are already pushing a lot of name across the African continent, right? So you don't want to do too much. Maybe they would have to be forced to merge. Then we'll start all this whole branding process all over again. I think maybe that is why we are trying to move according to their own pace. Because of course, if they can meet up, then every person can fill in. I think so. It is more of the tier 1 banks meeting up first, right? Every other person can find a way to merge and so I think that's the approach. And I feel that if we see that they are getting bigger again, they're being found. So it may not necessarily be a 5-year thing, 10-year thing. It might even be a 3-year thing, 7-year thing, depending on how we see the growth coming up from this capitalization exercise. Yeah.
Okay. That's good then. Our banks definitely are one of our strongest sectors,
banking
sector, in Nigeria. Let's talk about, the state of the currency. We're seeing report about the Naira stabilizing to 1,480, 400, appreciating to 1,480, 1,485. And it seems to have stayed in that less than 1,500 range for some days now, so even at the what you call the retail market now, what you would call the retail market, what we used to call the parallel market, you're also seeing that you are seeing 1,490, 1,495, and then we're also seeing our reserve going up to over $43 billion. That's gross reserve, according to the CBN governor. Of course, there is a direct correlation, between both, right?
So I think that there's no way you would look at the stability so far and not give 100% kudos to the CBN. What we've done in recent times has just shown that over half or more than half of our issues as a country is more about structure than even the implementation of whatever policies. So if you have a structural setup that is airtight, you realize that a lot of things get done faster, and that is what we've seen. 3, 4, 5 years ago, we had about how many rates, right? And now it's almost collapsing. It's 2-1. In fact, the variance is very, very small, and that has really shown you can now properly account for where the funds are coming from. And of course, you cannot take away the fact that the last I know you accused me of that last week. Our crude oil bills are getting bigger because we are meeting up with our quota. So that also is an addition, right? Even though I think this year we've had one of the highest FPIs we've had one of the highest FPIs.
Yes.
So that also is playing a role, right? So for me, that's why I keep saying what is our goal, because if we are celebrating a lot about the appreciation, not the stability, which is for me is the key thing, then you need to tell us when we get to a point and we are saying, okay, this is where we really want to stop.
Well, can both of them coexist?
So the reason why it can't coexist is simple. You do not want to keep defending at the expense of you just saving your reserves. Just save what you have. Again, if you're seeing a price, okay, this price is decent. That's what I'm saying. There has to be target. If this price is 1,300, that is 1,000. Let's just leave it like that and see and show up our reserves. What's stopping of having a reserve of $100 billion? What's stopping of having a reserve of $150 billion? Because then what it means is that you cannot face any shocks in any time soon. And that is what it means. So, but if you still spend every of those monthly, exactly, then it's still a problem. So instead, just maintain stability. Stability alone gives the actual market players, which are people that actually do the actual trades. Yeah. So when you are so focused on the rates, right, and you're focused on appreciation, then you are giving room for people called speculators to play in the space. So you just want to have stability, let business, because then if you look at the stability alone, right, has driven down inflationary pressures, no matter how you look at it, right? So if that is the case, that is the real win, not necessarily the how much of how it is going down, take it to 1,000.
So let's talk about, you talked about, driving down inflation, this is very interesting, because there was a clamor for the CBN to cut rates, and they eventually, cut by 50 basis points, which some people think is not as significant, to the economy. It won't move the needle, but they did do something, right, at the last MPC. Now, the idea has been, when you talk about raising interest rates, is it about fighting inflation or attracting FPIs that can show up reserves? But indirectly, when you are able to attract your FPIs and you are showing up your reserves, your currency, whether you're looking at appreciating or stabilizing, sort of helps push down inflation a little as well. So even if you're not directly focusing on driving down inflation, you're still being able to do that indirectly.
Exactly.
That's what the CBN has been doing.
Exactly. So they've done that indirectly. Of course, it was never the, like you said, indirectly. It was never the direct approach, but the resultant effects.
Because our monetary policies alone would not have fixed our inflation.
Exactly. Our monetary policies would not have, because it's not even doesn't have capacity to fix our inflation, right? Because like I usually say, we are a largely informal sector. Right, so when you start using monetary policy mechanisms, it will not transmit effectively, right? And if it doesn't transmit effectively, it is still a problem. We are going to be putting your people into extreme poverty. Not like we don't have people in extreme poverty. We do, but what we are simply doing is we are taking the risk and looking at what is the end game, right? And the end game is that if we keep going at this trajectory, we will drive down inflation to a certain level, but the fiscal side now has to take charge of whatever developmental projects in terms of creating enabling environment, creating jobs. That is outside of the CBN's purview. But in terms of the CBN's purview, I think the main win really is not even about the interest rate. The main win is about being able to stabilize the currency, which has always been the biggest issues, right? And now the kind of FPI we've gotten, because our rate is very high, right? In fact, they prefer to naira denominated assets are doing way more than the dollar-denominated assets. So that's why people are even switching more into converting their funds. So that has really helped, right? And that has really helped in terms of mopping up cash to be able to keep defending, like we said. But in the real sector conversation, it is really stifling the real sector.
Well,
I think we've not even talked about it enough about how bad it is, right? It is so bad that a majority of these companies you even see that are quoting a lot of numbers because of the stock market, right? And that's why even when the CBN gave the directive to the bank, it exposed that a lot of these banks were not even they're just giving out paying dividends, doing that just to keep getting more subscription, and that is not a very nice way to push an economy. It is a very
if we have more companies in the real sector listed on the stock market. Wouldn't that push the economy?
So if we had more companies based on the real sector, it has zero effect on the economy if they are not doing real sector businesses. Remember that stock market is perception, right? If all of us here buy a particular stock, that's what we appreciate. Doesn't necessarily mean the company is doing well, and that is the problem. So, and if the company is stock is appreciating it, that's a role it plays.
But everybody's buying because company is doing well, right?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
So it's a function of the fact that we have so much cash. Because we have so much cash in circulation, that the high interest rate is mopping them up to the stock market. But we're also having FPIs coming into the stock market. So that's why we're having that appreciation. But it is not yet playing in the real sector, which is a problem that I think it's not just the CBN that should be solving that.
It's fiscal authorities
exactly
as well.
has to be
which is why, like we said earlier, monetary policies alone cannot fix Nigeria's inflation. Also because Nigeria's inflation is more of a supply issue. So the fiscal side needs to step up. Maybe when the tax laws go into effect next year, maybe we'll see something.
Tax laws just make government more money.
Well, yeah, it's also supposed to help tighten some loopholes and things like that.
Faith, we need to solve our consumption issues. The reason why these businesses are crumbling is because Nigerians are not earning as much to consume as much. Basic fact. When you look at the dynamics of it, it's not about us producing more at this stage. We just need more people to be able to earn more and we've not been able to do that because we've not necessarily have this industry-focused approach, right? And that is what we need to really do.
One of the things that the administration has been focusing on, if you're looking at, it's a lot of macroeconomic indices, but it's not translating to the microeconomy, which is where your people actually starts to feel the impact. Well, they say it will get there, so let's see if it will trickle down, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right, still on the Business Lens here on Rapid TV. We are going to go on a short break. When we return, we're going to be talking a lot about Dangote. Like I said, the future is Dangote Refinery features heavily on the news today, on the show today. There's so much going on, especially with Pengasyn and Nupeng. Will Dangote Refinery, really ever be able to stay clear of these issues? Stay with us. We'll come back to that. All right, welcome back to the Business Lens. I mentioned before the break that we're going to be talking a lot about the Dangote Refinery. And let's start off with the refinery announcing that it is now going to resume petrol sales in Naira. Remember that I think it was a few days ago, Dangote Refinery announced that they were not going to be able to do that again because they said that they had run out of the allocated Naira for crude, that they had. And that if they continue to do that, it would start to tell on their balance sheets and on their profitability. So one of the things that happened was that I think the Naira for crude thing, it wasn't suspended. It just didn't come through when it was supposed to kick in. And Dangote was like, see, I'm a businessman. This is not working for me. You know what is very interesting for me? This is an aside. Like, Dangote remembers profitability and being a businessman when it suits him, when the refinery is concerned. And at other times, like, oh, I'm a national asset. Okay, we'll get there. Anyway, so one of the things that it said was that it had run out of what was allocated to it when you're looking at the issue of, Naira for crude. And so because of that, they're not going to be able to continue. So the federal government, of course, stepped in. It has been resolved again. And, Dangote Refinery announced again that they are now pleased to inform that the resumption of PMS sales in Naira is commencing immediately. What is very interesting is that we know that I think it was back in June or July that you had the federal government say that this is a permanent, it doesn't have any terminal date, the issue of this Naira for crude, and it applies not just to Dangote Refinery but to other smaller refineries as well in the country, so that they are able to actually sell to Nigerians also in Naira, right? So that is basically what it is. So let's talk about that. Like I said, when it suits him, it's like, you know what, it's affecting my profitability. And this time was one of those times.
So I think there has never been a time that he has been a national asset. There's always been a Dangote refinery that is created for profitability. The only thing is he's really leveraging an existing market, right? Of which it has shown, and I stick to this opinion because I feel that we need to really understand the oil sector, right, and really get it clearly that it's a closed sector. The closed sector is a sector that every player is clear, like they are already defined. Like there is no new aspect to the game that you want to bring in that is not already there. So the only thing you're just coming to do is either be a part of the engine or you just stay outside, right? So if he's coming to be a part of the engine, that means you're disrupting existing program, the existing systems, right? So if you're disrupting existing systems, you need to go. You have two ways to go about it. One is either you are leveraging the support of your government, right? Because it's a closed sector. They are going to be supporting 100% to ensure that you get things done without any hiccups, or you have the backings of the existing players in that space. And I think Dangote has struggled with both, right? From the get-go, from the beginning, right? The first issue that came out about when he was trying to complete the refineries was the share of the NNPCL in the business, right? We struggled. It was meant to be 20-something%.
It was 20% actually,
20%.
And then the NNPC dropped it down to 7%.
Exactly. So NNPC couldn't come up with the other 13%, which was meant to be supply, right? Couldn't follow up with that, and it dropped to 7%, right? We started. That was the first media podcast or media interview, media issues on the ground, right? Apart from what we've been having pre-setup of the refineries, when we had so many conversations from the CBN governor then about the fact that they are supporting this to make
It wasn't just even the CBN governor, it was also the Minister of State for Petroleum,
Even the NNPC,
actually, so you can start to fault Dangote for this, but you can also look at the role that government officials played where this was concerned, because every time they talked about it as being a national asset. Oh, we have shares in it, so it belongs to Nigerians as well. And at the end of the day, this is going to help Nigeria. It's going to drop the price of. We heard all sorts.
In fact, there were different media conversations that it was said as if it was going to be solving a lot of problems. That if the PIA Act, is signing into law, and that the refinery says so, we've been able to, we're going to be solving a lot of issues. Right?
And you remember that even at that time, before the refinery got finally set up, which was when we finally heard Dangote talking a lot, it was the government officials that were speaking for him the most.
They spoke more about the
He wasn't really speaking at that time. So it was by the time he came on stream, you know, that you now started seeing all this back and forth. But before we get, you know, so the Naira for Quit thing has resumed again. But let's talk about, because I know that you want to get into some of his issues. So let's introduce the Pengasing issue first, and you can talk about that together. So we had Pengasing, you know, announced that all its members are going to down tools. Why? They said Dangote Refinery embarked on an indiscriminate sacking of members, and you know, has now hired over 2,000 Indians and things like that, and said that, you know, it goes against the Nigeria Labour Act, asking all its people to down tools. And what is very interesting here, you know, is how Dangote is you know, responding to this. Unlike with Newpeng, that you had that, let's have a conversation, let's talk, you know, because they did actually have grounds to stand on, Newpeng, saying that you can't say that your members of your staff cannot join unions. It goes against Labour Acts and things like that. But with Pengasing, you know, especially if they're not providing the proof that, you know, Dangote, where's the proof right now to support this? Dangote is coming really hard on them and saying, you're trying to sabotage the refinery. You're trying to prevent 230 million Nigerians from getting fuel. And they refer to Pengasing's move back in 2007, when you know, the Port Harcourt refinery was supposed to be sold to the Dangote Group, how they opposed it, you know, talking about even how they you know, came out to give a different view of what's happening in the Port Harcourt refinery, saying that it is not working, basically saying that when it comes to the oil sector in Nigeria, the biggest problem is Pengasing. That they're trying to sabotage everything, and then now you have the federal government saying, oh, you know what, don't let the strike be what you do. Let's try to sort this out. So let's talk about that, you know, because it feels like Dangote Refinery, maybe it's all setting itself up like that, is easy to pick on by these different unions.
Okay, so I wouldn't say that. I think I would say that because of its disruptive nature, you have two ways to go about this. Diplomacy, I think you talked about 1.5 trillion conversations. Was it last week? Was it for Newpeng?
I think that was with Newpeng.
Guys,
you know, so I think Pengasing is like, oh, what about us?
Exactly. So it shows that the way this particular sector is, and that was why my initial conversation was that I said, if Dangote, for example, if Dangote is seeing this, right, and saying, my business is, yes, it is a refinery, right, in the crude oil sector. Right, that means that I'm not limited to the Nigerian market.
But he's not.
But the activity so far, right, gives an idea that I think Nigerian market is key. Yes,
it should be key, shouldn't it? That's where you are domiciled.
Yeah.
Right?
So exactly. So this is the thing. That's why it goes back to what we were talking about before you brought the Pengasing issue in. That you said the Nigerian government were the ones championing this idea in quotes that we are going to have a refinery that solves our problems, right? So when it comes in and they no longer feel to solve the problem, I think it's important that he also sees that, okay, this is likely to be, it's an exposure it can afford to have, right? This is a refinery, assuming it is maybe a 50-50 by Nigerian government, Dangote, it's not a problem, right? They have a stake in it, so if it doesn't work, fine. But now it has to work. They have a
very negligible stake.
Exactly, so it has to work. So if it has to work, then he has to understand the fact that this is an hotbed. This is an hot zone. There's too much controversies around the Nigerian market he has been dealing with. I've not heard him sell to other countries and have issues. He sends fuel to the US.
But doesn't that give credence to what he's saying? Because he's not just talking about, he sends fuel to, he sends products to Saudi Arabia, the US, West Africa, some other countries in Europe, right? And he's not had issues.
Yes.
So doesn't that give credence to what he's saying, that this is a sabotage situation that is going on here?
Okay, so
you know, it doesn't that give credence to that?
Very good question, Faith. But Dangote has gone to the court how many times? I'm talking about 40 different rulings, right? 40 different approaches to the court. Which of them has he followed through? He has withdrawn a lot of them, right?
I think the threats, like,
exactly.
Just go to court.
Exactly. So you've seen him take NNPC to court. You've seen him take FCCPC has taken him to court. There's so many issues, right? So for me, it is more about now. If they're thinking about it, like, refinery is already here, right? It's already here, and you need to keep getting your capacity in full, right? See, for example, you just threaten the government that I'm not going to sell fuel in Naira, and they quickly got the Naira to. So, at the end of the day, and you have an issue with Pengassin, they're trying to shut off things, and nobody is saying anything. There should be security conversations here, because if there is an issue that has to do with labor, right, there are different approach to it. There's an industrial court that solves this issue. So why is Pengassin not going to court? Why is Dangote also not taking the issue to court? Because it's been sabotaged. Because then, one way or another, you should get an injunction. You can get a lot of things from the court. So why is everybody? I
think they're waiting for. You've just talked about him, instituting how many suits and how they fell out. This is basically probably him waiting. Like, okay, let's see what the federal government does about this. The federal government, well, they have spoken. The federal government has asked Pengassin to stop with the strike, go back to work while they mediate. So it should be more than just what mediating. It should be a case of everybody bring your proof, So if you're saying that it's October 2000, now it's like what we're doing is a reorganization, and we have over 3,000 Nigerians working for us. The people that were fired were just a handful. A company should be able to say, we are restructuring, and so we're letting some people go. You cannot hold them to ransom if they have good grounds to let those people go. So you can't say because you're a union, then, the company should not have, which is part of the reason why I was like, you see this union thing, I don't want you people to, because especially if they have a grouse against you, they can make sure that you don't function. So
that is why the mediating should have been way earlier, right? Because there was no way you allow this issue get to this point. And I think it is more of, because I was listening to the Pengassin chairman, and it's more of everybody just looking for public sympathy. You see, if a company says I want to let people go, right, he has a right to. However, as a union, you should also it should not be a function of it can do anything he wants to, because no matter how you look at it, right, if there is an indiscriminate removal of these employees, then there is a problem, right? It means that at any time he doesn't necessarily, it's not the patriotic approach anymore. That means it's just like any other multinational company that comes in and just treats its local employees indiscriminately. So those are the issues that is usually an industrial court issue, right? So I feel that should have gone to the industrial court. While it's at the industrial court, Pengassin cries out to say, government, you need to intervene in this, and let's have a conversation now. Yeah, but going as far as saying we want to shut things off.
So it's basically we're shutting things down and doing media chats and things like that.
It's too extreme, and it shows this level of everything must spoil.
Because what it also means is that you're going to reintroduce queues, you're going to introduce a lot of issues for the Nigerian people. So who are you fighting for, really?
I'd have asked even the Pengassin chairman, I was like, okay, if you are shut it down, right, so suddenly the 3,000 people that are left there, Nigerians, are not able to also work. So what is it?
What have you achieved?
Exactly. So yes, you are actually correct about the fact that there's this aggressiveness towards the Dangote refinery's operation. I also think that Dangote also has a bit of blame in this, in his aggressive response. You are coming into an industry that is disrupting trillions of waste, right? So nobody's going to come and just allow it just go like that. It is fact, right? We saw what's happening with the US with Dodge, right? As soon as Elon Musk was beloved, as soon as Elon Musk started cost cutting and all this efficiency conversation, it became the enemy, and that is the way it works.
And it's been ousted.
Exactly. So you cannot just come in like that and do that, because then if the refinery is a long-term project, it's going to be there for 10, 20, hundreds of years, right? So it's going to be there for hundreds of years. Then you would have to actually be diplomatic at the initial stage to be able to penetrate the market. You cannot try to
bulldoze your way.
Because these people, these conversations, in fact, some conversations, you can have the conversations with them verbally. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And after these people are removed, you switch back to whatever. So you need to also be very diplomatic with this conversation, because then you've done businesses for over 30 years already. I
think back at Dangote's grouse is people stopped me from acquiring Port Harcourt and Canary refinery since 2007. You think I'm going to let you do anything to my refinery? So there's a lot of 20 years like old grudges coming up.
Exactly.
Because when I saw the statement, I was like, oh wow, you're going there. Anyway, thank you so much, Daniel.
But the controversy is way too much, and it's really affecting some level of stability in that sector that we shouldn't be having at this stage. And this is why I don't like the approach of the government so far in terms of sitting back on this business, because this business is important to us. Why sit back on?
I mean, because y'all call it's national assets until when? Okay. Anyway, thank you very much, Daniel, for being a part of the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today as well. We'll see how this plays out with Penga Singh and Dangote, and of course, what the federal government gets to do about it. But that there will be some firm resolution now. We will wait to see. On the other side of the hour, we have the news coming up. That's Rapid TV News. That's 12 o'clock hour. So stay with Rapid TV. We'll do this again, of course, on Thursday. Thank you so much again, Daniel.
Thank you, Faith.
My name is Faith Daffo Joseph. Enjoy the rest of your day.